Police have beefed up security in the Umzinto area on the KwaZulu-Natal south coast, where violent protests broke out when community members protested over a local councillor candidate. Roads in the area were blocked with burning tires and rubble, which led to a tense standoff between the community and police. A school which was serving as a voting station was vandalized by the community members and remained closed. The community has vowed that voting won't take place in the area. The community alleged that shots were fired at community members by the ward councillor's bodyguards. Police could only confirm that shots were fired, but couldn't say if people were injured. The councillor fled the area and was not available for a response to the allegations. To look at issues of security, voter apathy and special vote analysis, amongst others, is political analyst Makhosini Mgitywa. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mgitywa. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe. Please unmute your device, sir. We're not able to hear you. We're still not able to hear you, sir. Please unmute your device.
It's unmuted. It's not muted, actually.
Okay, there we go. There we go. I can hear you now. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Apologies for the problem.
No worries, no worries. I mean, it happens. First of all, Mr. Mgitywa, I mean, what's your analysis of how the special voting went today? Is it an indication that perhaps the country and ultimately the IEC is ready to host the main elections on Monday the 1st?
Look, I haven't heard of any serious problems anywhere in the country other than, those minor incidents that one can expect from time to time. I think overall we can expect a successful election. I'm not sure as to what the turnout is going to look like, and I don't think that we can look at today as an indication of what the turnout is going to be. We'll have to wait and see how it turns out or how it pans out on Monday. But I think it's promising. I think there is enthusiasm among South African citizens that they realize that local government is a very important sphere of government, and they would want to make sure that they elect the right people to represent them at that sphere.
The reasonable expectation is that the IEC needs and must conduct impeccable elections free of any incidents. We've just mentioned some of the minor incidents, and we've discussed with those minor incidents with the political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley a short while ago, and about some incidences of where some voting stations were not able to open. And it might be problematic for the IEC, seeing the fact, given the fact that some people may not necessarily be able to vote today, and they only had tomorrow, and they only had today to cast their ballot. So, in a sense, that violates the right to vote, which is a very, very important matter.
Look, I don't think that the IEC would do that deliberately. I think they know that, during this election, they have faced criticism like they've never faced criticism before. And I think that they would want to make sure that, nothing happens or there's nothing that can be attributed to them as the IEC that would cause people to doubt, the validity of the election and the credibility of the election. I think we can look at what happened today as teething problems that they would attend to make sure that, on Monday we have a free and fair and smooth election without any problem. I think that, the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa is one of the most credible electoral commissions in the whole world. We've had free and fair elections, we've had credible elections. We haven't had a problem before. I think if there are any problems, we must take into account that it happens at a very difficult time when there's a pandemic that's affected this country, and there's still a lot of people who are not vaccinated. Some of them may feel uneasy with exposing themselves and going out to vote. But overall, I think that the IEC has done very well under the circumstances. You would remember that they wanted this election to be postponed, and the court said no, it shouldn't be postponed. So they got on with it, and I think they are doing their best. There will be problems here and there. Problems are everywhere in the world where their elections can never have a 100% smooth operation. But we'll have to wait and see how tomorrow pans out and how Monday pans out as well.
You know, Mr. Mgitywa, some people were commending the IEC for having taken the bold move and for this initiative of visiting, going door to door and visiting some of the voters who are not able to come to the voting stations to cast their ballot. So in terms of the fairness of this election, in terms of this election being free and fair, are you at all impressed with how this particular aspect of visiting families who are unable to cast their votes, because in some instances there's a possibility of, the IEC officials taking advantage of the situation. Some voters may not be able to, understand what this special voting is about. And there could be instances of, the IEC officials influencing people to vote in a certain way.
Look, there is always a risk of dishonesty where human beings are involved.
Yes.
But one would hope that, the IEC has impressed the best values amongst its staff, that they will appreciate that it is the right of every citizen to vote, and it is the right of every citizen to vote for the political party or the individual that they want to vote for, and that, they shouldn't interfere with that. And I think that, it would be risky for them to do that because people, talk. And I don't think they would want a situation where there is a number of people who say, I wanted to vote for this party, but I was influenced to vote otherwise. I don't think that we haven't experienced that before. Certainly it wasn't reported, and I don't think that we can expect it now. I think that, there are things that sometimes happen, when, problems happen sometimes when you have to visit people, there may be this problem or that problem. But I think overall, the IEC in South Africa has acquitted itself beyond any question in the past elections that we've had, and I don't see why they would want to deviate from that at this particular time. These are local government elections, and there isn't as much pressure as there is when you have national elections and provincial elections, where there is a lot at stake, at least from how people perceive it. I think here with this local government election, in my view, I think the IEC has done its work the way we expect them to, given the problems that they had to deal with. The state of readiness, which was suspect due to the fact that they were expecting the elections to be postponed. But I think once a decision was taken that the elections must take place, they have shown themselves to be ready and equal to the task. And one can only hope that after Monday, when we review the situation, we will find them to have given us a free and fair and credible election.
Do you foresee the political violence that we've seen in the past few weeks and the past few months deterring people from going out to vote? A case in point is the political violence hotspot, which is KwaZulu-Natal. Will this likely deter people to go out and vote? Because it hinges and borders around their own personal safety and security.
Look, we can only hope that, there wouldn't be any South African who would interfere with the rights of others to vote for the political parties that they want to vote for. Political violence is always a possibility, particularly in a province like KwaZulu-Natal. But, up to so far, it has given us a sense that, the people who get murdered, for instance, are people who are, councillor candidates, and one can speculate that perhaps it's a different party not wanting a popular person coming from an opposition, a party that is not theirs, not standing for the election. And sometimes it is a situation where someone within the very same party wanted the nomination, they didn't get it. But one hopes that, when all of that is considered, we are going to have a free, fair and credible election like we've always had in South Africa.
The general sentiment, Mr. Mgitywa, is that so many people are, fed up with their parties, in particular the top three. The African National Congress, which has been running most of the municipalities, and the Democratic Alliance as well. Some people are not at all happy with their parties, and this has led to voter apathy, in particular amongst the younger voting population. So if for argument's sake, and that is, that's my own point of view, if for argument's sake, people, a small small number of people or an unimpressive number of people go out to the polls and vote, would that be, representative of the will of the people? Would the crop of councillors in office be, ostensibly legitimate?
My observation with political parties, let me start with the three biggest political parties nationally. And it doesn't always hold that the biggest parties nationally are the biggest parties in the various municipalities. For instance, in KwaZulu-Natal, you've got the IFP factor, and in other provinces, there are other parties as well. But if we are to look at the national picture, looking at the ANC, the DA, and the EFF, all these three parties have gone out to galvanize, to energize their base. And I think all, supporters of political parties and voters truly appreciate the importance of this election. And I think people have learned now, particularly from 2016, that if you don't go out to vote, you are essentially voting for the party that you don't want to win the election. And I think people appreciate that. And I think, the EFF also has energized its base, which is largely youth. One would expect them to go out and vote. The ANC and the DA also, are targeting the young vote. They are making sure that they want their people to go out and vote. I don't think that we are going to have a terribly low turnout. I think that, the question of apathy is always there. But I think those people that are going to go out and vote are going to give us a picture of what South Africans or in the various municipalities as to who they want to govern them. I don't think that we can have a situation where the voter turnout is so low that the credibility of the election is questioned.
Okay, and we've also seen political parties signing the electoral code of conduct, which essentially promotes an environment that will see the free and fair election. So many parties have appended their signatures on that particular, electoral code of conduct. And those parties which intimidate other candidates and other parties, what should be the punitive measures imposed on them?
Look, I think the law is clear in that regard, that if you interfere with the IEC in its work, if you interfere with voters exercising their right to vote, there are serious consequences for that in terms of the law. And I think that, prosecutions would have to take place without fear, favor, or prejudice, where people interfere with the rights of others to vote. But I think for us to even maybe speculate on how this election is going to be, we just have to look at the past elections that we've had. We've never in South Africa had a situation where an election is questioned, people doubting its credibility. If there's one thing that we get right in South Africa, we conduct our elections very well, and parties that lose usually give up power without any struggle, without any protest or anything of the sort. I don't expect anything different this time around. I don't know what could be the factor, perhaps, that would be of concern to certain people. But from what I've observed, this is just an election like any other election, the difference being that we have COVID restrictions that political parties had to operate within them, and most of the political parties have flouted those regulations anyway. So it was just an election like any election campaign that we've seen in the past. And I think that come Monday, the reflection of the people who are going to come out to vote will be that of an election that is free, fair, and credible, like all the elections that we've had in the past.
The country's authorities have assured South Africans that there will be no load shedding during the voting process. So what does that tell you in terms of priorities of the country's authorities? Because the past week we've seen, a massive stage 4 load shedding during the matric exams. So, what does that tell you about the priorities or how the country's authorities prioritize certain issues which are of national importance?
Look, my speculation since then, and looking at this as an ordinary South African, my thought was if Eskom implements load shedding a week before the election, which means that they didn't have room to maneuver so that they can avoid load shedding, that simply suggests to me that they are facing a very serious problem as Eskom, a serious generation problem. But one understands that they did what they did so that there is no possibility, at least according to what they're saying, So there's no possibility of load shedding during the time that people are voting and when votes are counted. But one understands that whenever there is load shedding, there is someone somewhere who is negatively affected. In this particular instance, it were the learners, matric, and other grades that are sitting for examinations. And it's not only about sitting for the examination, but it's also preparing the previous night, preparing for the examination. Without power, many people have been affected. And I think this should send a very clear message to ESCOM that, and everybody who is in charge of the situation, that the load shedding is a major problem for South Africans, not only from an economic development point of view, because you can't quite develop, you can't quite grow the economy if you don't have energy or if you have limited energy. I've seen there is an economist who's speculating that we cannot look at a growth rate of above 1% with ESCOM and its load shedding. So I think they fully appreciate that. I think the situation at ESCOM has deteriorated to the point that it's very difficult for them to even to keep the lights on at this very important time. Children preparing for for examinations, and South Africans generally preparing for elections. I think that it's a matter that President Cyril Ramaphosa and the government must attend to make sure that we are a more energy secure country, and we don't have the situation like this where learners preparing for examinations are negatively impacted because of load shedding.
All right, Mr. Mgitywa, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for your analysis.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Mr. Makhosini Mgitywa. He's a political analyst and just taking us through the special voting which has been observed across the country.